Well, to kick off this semester's entrepreneurial journey in competition, I want to introduce the speaker tonight, who is a lifelong entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, and works out of Long Beach here, has been in Long Beach for a long time. Not that he's been around a long time.
Thank you.
So,
I'm seasoned. Okay.
he's experienced. So Walter Larkins, who is on the Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship's board. He is on the Long Beach Accelerators board. He is the chair of the Economic Development Commission for Long Beach. And he just launched another startup last year that has already had a significant raise and go to market. He's expanded significantly. And is partners with another member of the Institute's board. So they've been putting all of their knowledge to work for themselves, as well as sharing it with the Long Beach Accelerator cohort companies and with the Institute companies we work with. And also has an added attraction for you, since all of you, I think, are competing in the Sunstone Innovation Challenge. Walter has been a judge in the finals competition 3 or 4 times for that competition. So if at the end you have any questions about how judges look at the teams and the pitches, he's not only been a judge for the Innovation Challenge, he's also been a judge for many other of our competitions as well. So we'll turn it over to Walter to tell you about his journey and to then interact with you and answer your questions. Walter, all right.
All right, everyone. My name is Walter Larkins. I'm a serial entrepreneur. What does that mean? But let me ask you a few questions, just so I get a feel of where all you are now. So first of all, how many of you are already entrepreneurs? Like you have a company, you started it, and you're running around looking for money. Okay, go. Very good. Okay, so how many of you think you want to be an entrepreneur? Very good. Okay, that's good. That's a lot. Because people often think about what is an entrepreneur. So I'm going to tell a little bit about my story, but I'm really going to talk about the journey after, because that is a journey that all of you, if you decide to become an entrepreneur, you're going to take. And it's a journey. Journey meaning it's going to be challenging. So did I always want to be an entrepreneur? Because there's people who believe there's such thing as an entrepreneur mindset. Like you just know that you're going to be an entrepreneur. You're born, boom, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Well, in some ways, I guess for me, I was somewhat of a nerd. Okay, now a lot of entrepreneurs happen to be nerds. And what is the definition of a nerd? Anyone know? What's a nerd? They're very popular. They weren't cool in the past when I was young, but they're definitely cooler now. So what's a nerd? Anyone have an idea? You're pointing to one. Okay. Well, nerd. Anyone agree with that?
The first level. Sitting in the first level.
Okay. Anyone else have a nerd? Okay, so someone called someone out. Some of you might not want to admit you're a nerd, okay? Because you know, nerds are a lot cooler than they were, but they're not as cool as an athlete, for example. And we're kind of quiet. Most nerds are shy, okay, until they're not. They're not shy with their friends, but in a situation like this, they are shy. So how did I get here? I grew up in the hood, first of all. Okay, so I didn't have a lot of advantages. I didn't have a network. My network was something with my dad and my mom, which were together in a tough neighborhood. And that's what you have together. So they both had a interest in me becoming quote unquote educated. And so education was important. That's why you're here. So you believe that education is important for you. But when you're that age, and I'm talking about young, like 10, you really don't know what education means. Like what's education? What am I going to learn? And so when I started thinking about what I want to do the rest of my life, which some of you may still be thinking, and frankly, I'm still thinking what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. That's one of the questions that you're oftentimes confronted. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? You have all these plans, and usually your parents have some plans for you, and you just don't know what the situation is going to be long term for you. So I wanted to be a doctor. That was my initial plan. That was plan A. Many of you have parents that have plan A for you. Okay, doctor, accountant, lawyer. Those jobs, of course, AI will eliminate in the next few years. However, at that time, that looked like a pretty secure position. By the time I was 12, I'd nerded myself out of being a doctor because I had a little laboratory in my garage, and I had a chemistry lab, and I just burned myself out. And I didn't know what I wanted. And that's a really weird feeling when you're in 12th grade and you got your college all set up. We're going to go to, I was going to go to UCLA, I was going to go pre-med and go to UCLA to medical school. I had everything all mapped out, exactly what I was going to do. And then in the 12th grade, I told my parents, I'm not going to be a doctor. And my mother was extremely upset because she thought that I was going to be a plastic surgeon to keep her looking as good as she was. She was at that age. So she was very disappointed. My father was disappointed because he had planned out, told all his friends I was going to be a doctor. And so they were like bummed out. But I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And my father gave me some very interesting advice. He said, even though he was disappointed, he said, son, you should study business. I said, I didn't know what business was. I mean, how do you know what business is when you're 18? You don't know what business is. But it sounded like a destination because I felt like I was in the middle of the ocean with no breeze, no destination, and the heat bearing down on me. I saw time passing. Other people were already in college doing stuff. They knew what they wanted to do. They seemed so together, and I was like lost. So he also told me a couple other things. He said, son, you better get a scholarship because I'm not paying. And that's the only way I could stay home. That was one of his rules. So I did get a scholarship. My scholarship was to the military academy in West Point. Did I want to go in the military? It wasn't one of my goals. But it was a little bit of a goal, right? A short-term goal. West Point, 4 years of commitment at a military academy, that additional 4 years. I mean, I knew what I was going to do for the next 8 years, right? Comforting. So I graduated from UCLA with economics. Didn't have a business degree at that time, and sociology as my backup plan. And I served 4 years in the military, most of it in Europe. I enjoyed my time in the military. I didn't enjoy my time at West Point at all. It did not mesh with my personality, but they were paying for my school, right? So I hung in there, all right? But then I disappointed my parents, my father, the second time. I left West Point because I got a scholarship, ROTC, to go to any college I wanted. So am I going to go to West Point, cold, desolate, or am I going to another college? So I ended up leaving West Point after 2 years and then going to UCLA, graduating there. Served my time in the military. I was an officer. And then when I got out, because I didn't want to stay, it just didn't feel right. And that's one of the difficult decisions you have to make. You have to understand what's in your heart. When you do things for other people, it's not your, especially parents and others, and it's not in your heart, you're not going to be successful. So I just knew that. So when I left the military, I didn't know what I wanted to do again. Lost. What am I going to do? So I got a job at interviewing all these companies. They all wanted me. It was so great. With Coca-Cola. And why did I pick up Coca-Cola? Who knows? It was a great company. You heard about them. I interviewed with Procter & Gamble. A lot of guys from there came to Coca-Cola. So my decision making was simply, well, if they went to Coca-Cola from Procter & Gamble, then Coca-Cola must be better. But I did do something different. I started researching who were the CEOs of these big companies. What did they do first? Because I could have been anything in those companies, right? Operations, logistics, transportation, who knows, all of it. I found out that sales was where all those guys either came from or ultimately had to go back to before they became CEO of those companies. So that was pivotal for me. That choice to go into sales was my defining moment. And in 2 years, working for Coca-Cola, I got a call, and they said, "Hey, Walter, how'd you like to sell surgical devices to surgeons in the operating room?" Now, how do you think I felt about that? I want to be a doctor at one time, right? It was like fate had come together and said, "You don't have to be a doctor. You can still be in the operating room." Now, I did ask them one question. "You mean there are sales reps in the operating room? I mean, don't those guys already know what they're doing before they get there?" And the recruiter said, "No, they rely on sales reps." I couldn't believe it. So I went to the interview. They interviewed your wife. I was married at the time, had a little kid, and they make you go into surgery. So I don't want to be a doctor. I can handle this. The first operation he took me to was at Cedars-Sinai. I was standing in an operating room. I couldn't believe the sales rep had sold his doctor on his device who had never seen it before at the scrub sink. I said, "Oh my God, is this really guy going to use this for the first time?" So I go into the operating room and I'm stressed out. And you hear the buzzing and the electrocautery devices, the smells and the whole thing. It was crazy. And then, of course, being 6'5" and forgetting all the things I learned in the military, I felt a little bit weird. Made it out of the operating room, boom, 6'5" with me on the floor with 4 nurses looking over me. And when I recovered, I looked at the guy who was interviewing me for the job, he was a sales rep. He had his arms crossed like this, like another one bites the dust. And I look at him and say, "I know I can't sell these devices on my back. Please give me another chance." And so he did. Took me to another hospital in Santa Monica. I saw a different operation at that time. I'd never seen a lung before, so it didn't freak me out. The first operation was a mastectomy. I've seen one of those. And seeing it not attached to a human being was traumatizing. But suffice it to say, I ended up working for a J&J startup, brand new division, with a huge competitor that we're going after. And that was the beginning of really my experience in dealing with a company that was growing really, really fast. But I was having the best time of my life. I was finally doing something that I was passionate about. I figured I could work with this company for 1 million years. I mean, Johnson & Johnson. Who would want to work for them? So after 5 years at J&J, being part of the startup, inventing with other surgeons, brand new procedures, that's my job ended up being. I developed products and procedures for minimally invasive surgery. I had this idea. They took out the entrepreneurial management team because, it's like a baseball team. J&J had a deep bench, and they had different people for different purposes. So the initial guys, I loved them because they let me do anything I wanted. Anything that was in my head, they let me do. It was great. It was like having your own startup without having one. But that entrepreneurial management team left. The sustainability management team came in because our sales went from 0 to $250 million in 3 years. That's a huge growth. And then I went to the new management team and I said, "So I've got this idea. Why don't we do something with minimally invasive heart surgery? I mean, we've done everything else, gallbladders, lungs, kidneys, prostate, uteruses, you name bowel, all the things that can be removed from a tube, we were doing. I was training surgeons in hotels. I can't even tell you all the places, all the things we did. In 5 days, they were ready for action. Sounds a little scary, doesn't it? Yeah, it was. So this is what the VP of marketing said. He said, "Walter, we don't invest in ideas. We invest in markets. You prove that there's a market really consider investing. However, you're doing a great job, just keep on doing it. Now, I was about to make another decision. That's rather predictable. What am I gonna do? The person tells me I can't pursue what's in my head, and what am I gonna do? I'm gonna quit my perfectly good job. That's what I did, quit. I'm gonna start my own company. That sounds crazy, doesn't it? What do I know about starting a company? I just felt like I could do it. And so I had this little money, J&J stock saved up, and had my credit card, my platinum, American Express card. Didn't have black in those days. And I saved up a chunk of money. And I thought I'd go to my first VC meeting, they'd see my idea, how obvious it is that you can do this. I get my funding, and we'd be off to the races. So I asked one of my friends, because I know how to network, right? I sold all kinds of stuff. And he said, look, Walter, I'll set you up with this venture capitalist. And so I go to my first meeting. I have no idea what a VC is. All I know is they have money and I need it. Otherwise, I'm gonna start spending my own money. So I'm in this meeting with my drawing of what my invention was. I mean, it was literally a drawing, much better than a napkin, but pretty damn close. It was a drawing of how the heart is right now and the operation works, and a drawing right next to it of what our device is gonna look like and how it was gonna work. And I didn't have a PowerPoint. What's a PowerPoint? Why do you need that? I just talked to him. And after the financials, what is that? I don't know what that was. Why do I need it? I had this drawing right here. You know, it's gonna be big. I was so ignorant, it's hard to believe. And so after my presentation, the VC looked at me and said, Walter, we check your references and they're great. You have fantastic references. You've done some fantastic things over at J&J. However, you don't have a business plan. You don't have a prototype. You don't have a patent. And frankly, everyone we talk about your idea, they don't think it's gonna work. So what does that sound like? Does that sound like rejection? Rejection, right? Like bummer. Now he gave me a list I didn't even know I needed. Like a list of things I needed to do. I actually did not know. So I said, okay, list number one, business. Okay, prototype, patent. You know, those are things I didn't know I needed. I mean, that's a lesson plan, right? So I immediately took my list because look, when you're in sales, you can do a lot of rejection. Rejection is part of the game. Rejection is what you live for. Because until you get a no, you don't know if someone's lying to you or not. You really find out what's going on. So I went out of the meeting with a list. Now, how am I going to activate my list? How am I going to turn this list into an opportunity? Anyone have any ideas? Let's ready. You have no money. Yes, go ahead. Come on. You're pointing to the right guy. Go ahead. Yes.
I was gonna say research it, but I'm assuming. What year is this? You know, the internet.
It doesn't even matter. Research even back then. It's just humans just did it, okay? Research.
Yeah.
Okay, research, that's true. All right, what else? What else would you do? You're on the list, right? Business plan, patent, yes.
Well, I don't know, you're gonna patent without like a lawyer or something. You don't know how to do that yourself.
That's right. Anyone else? You know what I did? Go ahead.
Just add on to that, basically like network to find people that can do everything that's on the list.
Very good. And where do you go to find someone like that? Any ideas? Where do you go? You need people with money, right? People with money and connections. Where are you going to go? Do I need money and connections? Answer is. You say no. No. The answer is no. I had none. Okay. I didn't have any money or connections. So what am I going to do?
Maybe network.
Network, where and with whom?
Maybe, I mean, this is before internet, so maybe you went to a coffee
You're just
shop.
assuming, but it doesn't matter, go ahead.
Maybe you went to a coffee shop and saw a flyer about a local business club or something along the lines of that.
That's not a bad idea. Okay, yes.
Your business idea to an angel investment board. Capitalist.
Well, I tried that already. That didn't go too well, but you're right. If I can find something like that again, yes, yes.
I'd say like alumni from your college.
Alumni, that's getting closer, yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say college related, colleges host
Network,
networking
yeah.
events where you can go back and pass alumni.
Good.
Maybe like local conferences.
Conferences.
With other small businesses or potential entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Your
Good.
sorry, student, your college professor,
Pardon me?
your college professor.
College preferences. Professors, yeah, professors. That's good too, because your professors can be very connected. Wade's connected. Yeah, definitely, if I had someone like him, sure, that'd be great, yes. What? Previous job references. They may help me, absolutely, yeah.
Mine was similar to that.
Okay, that's true too. And I'll tell you what I did. Okay, all those things are great ideas. But my first problem is I don't have any what? Money. I have no money. Now, in my sales experience, what I figured out is people with money love foundations, nonprofits. They love it. They have so much money, they just have to figure out a way to spend it. And you have to figure out where those events are. Now, in the healthcare field, those were events related around foundations that are part of a hospital. And so I found that one because my customers were all surgeons, right? So I asked them, hey, when's the foundation meeting gonna be? And can you get me in? And he said, well, it's gonna be on this date, and yes, I can get you in. So this is one of the surgeons that I'd helped previously. Yeah, so I used one of my networks. Okay, the surgeon I helped make famous, the first patent on a procedure I helped him get. So he became a bazillionaire. But he wasn't gonna invest in my idea. He didn't think it would work. So I went to this foundation meeting, and there was 10 tables with all these guys that obviously had money sitting on this table. And I had my surgeon, this is assistant to my surgeon. I figured he knew why he was there. He was my third-party reference. In sale, your third-party reference is someone who says your stuff is the greatest thing since sliced bread. That's his job. I thought it was his job. I said, look at him. He said, he knew why he was there. He was a nice guy and everything, but hey, that's why I was there at the meeting. So I'm talking to this guy next to me, and he happens to be the great-great-great-grandson of the person who led those soldiers in that movie Glory. You guys remember that guy? You probably never saw the movie. But anyway, this is a guy who was connected to someone to a battle that this colonel was recognized for that led these black troops into battle against the Confederate Army, and they got wiped out, but it was legendary. It's a true story. Okay? So I figured for sure, because in all the places and spaces where I was, there were no black people. I think I saw one Asian assistant. There were no brown people, no black people, no women. It was like a desert. So this guy, I'm going to give him my little pitch, looks over to my surgeon on cue and says, well, what do you think about his idea? And what do you think he said?
It might suck, sir. Yeah.
Yes, he said, I don't think it's gonna work. So I wanted to kill him in the spot. He's a big guy, he's terrifying looking if I'm not smiling, you have no idea. So the guy next to him says, what's your name? My name is Walter. I like your idea. I'll consider investing. So he overheard my pitch to the other guy, and he liked my idea. But if I wasn't there, would that have happened? So I put myself in a situation, what I thought was a plan B, came into effect. And guess what? He was a former president of Fairchild Corporation, Fairchild Fasteners. He was also the chair when he was there, and he was just retired, and he has a heart condition. So it's like the perfect angel investor. He became my first investor in my company. Now, I had bought a whole duffel bag. You guys know what a duffel bag is?
Yeah.
Okay. I have to clarify the generational thing going on. Okay, a duffel bag full of books. I mean, I must have had 1,000 books. Controller, finance, or you name the books. I had it. How to start your thing, engineer your startup, whole 9 yards. And I sold him my duffel bag. And he looked at me and said, Walter, you can read all those books, okay? I'm not gonna tell you can't. Those books are important, you gotta read. But I'm gonna tell you the story between the lines of those books. And this is what he did. He told me what I needed to do. I knew what I needed to do because he had a prototype, a patent, business plan, financial, all that stuff. I'm gonna introduce you to a friend of mine from Stanford, who's an investment banker. He's gonna teach you everything you know about doing financials and presenting to investors. I'm gonna introduce you to a friend of mine who's a patent attorney. He'll probably give you the patent for free because he knows me, but he'll want a little bit of equity out of it. Can you find someone to do the prototype? I said, nah, that I knew, okay, because that's what I learned while I was at J&J. Yeah, I can find someone to do the prototype. Can you find someone other than yourself that believes in your idea? Oh, it's just one other person, preferably a surgeon. And I said, yes. He said, why didn't I say no? I did know a few heart surgeons. So I talked to this guy who was a friend of mine. We happened to be windsurfing together. That's why relationships and connections are so important. And I asked him, would he be a co-founder with me in my company? Because who's going to believe that a sales rep, glorified sales rep that I was, could invent a heart device? Anyone going to believe that? I mean, I told this story, people still don't believe it's happening. No, they're not going to believe it. Okay, just tell me. So you got to find someone with some credibility that is going to believe you. That's you have to be able to sell. One person other than you that believes in your idea. If you can't sell one person other than yourself, if your idea has some validity, then you are in trouble. You should just pack stuff up right now, just cruise on out the door. That's your number one mission. So I found the heart surgeon. And he started plunking money in. Not a lot of money, just enough to keep me going. Who's seen The Pursuit of Happiness? Okay, that was me. We didn't have an actual device, but we were selling this imaging system that allowed us to be in surgery with this technology that was still pretty advanced, where it wasn't a scope made of rods, it was a scope with a distal CCD chip. So you can go into the chest cavity and not turn into an oven, because those long instruments get hot. And who wants a hot instrument inside your chest cavity? So we sold that. We had to sell a certain amount of those things every single month. Otherwise, we go out of business, even with the money he was putting in, because they want us to work extra hard. That's one thing about investors. They're not giving you money. They're making you earn the money. And it was hard with a little 6-year-old wandering around. And I was married at the time. Fortunately, she was in marketing and she was able to help me out as well. So I made 54 presentations over 3 years. I got a 3-day notice to quit on my door. I asked my father if he had let me borrow some money. And I knew what he was going to say. He goes, son, get a real job. Now, I thought I had a real job because I was so-called an entrepreneur. But he didn't get it. Okay, he thought I left a perfectly good job, and in his mind, you could have been a doctor, decided not to do that. You went in the military, could have done that, nice secure career. Then you work for Coca-Cola. What? You quit that company, and now you're with J&J. You quit them. What is wrong with you? The employee. That's what's wrong. Okay, because an entrepreneur is someone that's always telling the company they work for what they should. And the fact is, they already have the idea, and therefore your idea is secondary to the idea that you're paid to execute. So you're a bad employee. So any of you guys here are bad employees, you might be able to become an entrepreneur. So after my 54th DC meeting, the 55th meeting, something happened. Patents take a long time to get through the patent office. It takes up to 2 years, sometimes, even longer. Sometimes 2.5 to 3 years. for that thing to pop out. We call it a black hole. You know, black hole, something just pops out like Star Trek for those nerds. It pops out and you see yours come out of the black hole first. Oh my God, you're so excited. The VCs were excited, who we were talking to, and we were excited. Wow, you know, we have a patent on our device. We're so excited. I can't even tell you, I'm still excited about it. And then 6 months later, that Klingon ship blasted out of the black hole too, with a technology similar to ours that had raised $200 million from these guys who are from Stanford. I mean, really? And they had so many letters in the back of their names, I didn't even know what they all were. MD, PhD, JD, you know, just every little letter that you could possibly have. How many letters did I have? I had no letters. Okay, no letters. And I looked a lot different than they did. But the VCs couldn't get in that deal because it was closed. So they looked at us as their savior. Yeah, we want to get into minimally invasive surgery. How obvious. And we had priority on their patents. Back in those days, it was first to invent and then first to file. So we invented it earlier than they did, and we filed before they did. So we had a very strong leverage position against the other company. I was in a presentation with these VCs, due diligence. They're going to hire some person to tear apart your business plan. They're going to tear apart your patent. They're going to find something wrong if they can. All of you who have a company, at some point, the venture capitalist is going to put you through the ringer. And that's what they did to me. I had to talk to this law firm. He pissed my lawyer so off that the things that they were saying, he walked out and left me by myself to argue myself. Now, at that time, I already learned everything to know about patents, and I was able to defend my own patents. I don't need you. I can defend my own patents. You can defend your intellectual property. If you can't rely on someone else doing that, if that person fails, freaks out, freezes, you better be ready for action. And so we passed that diligence. But they treated me so poorly, me and my co-founder, black heart surgeon, like we weren't anything. And then they gave us our term sheet. Who knows what a term sheet is? It's something very exciting you will get if you're successful. Term sheet, anyone know? Yes. Well, a little bit, go ahead.
Well, I guess when they kind of help me out the start of the contract, position, they're going to take, and
Yeah, that's exactly right.
just go down and you have to sign it.
And then you get your money, right? Yeah. Okay, guess what? However, the term sheet is like almost like signing your blood on a contract, because they're going to try to take your blood. So this is the deal they offered me. They're willing to plunk in this much money, and they want 25%. They're going to invest 75% of the equity. That means they're going to lay it out there in the future. And they want me to, the people who had helped me get to where I was, take their equity back so they can have more. They got rid of the venture capitalists that actually introduced me and said, there's no room for you, I'm sorry. And I just looked at that behavior and I said, wow, you know, you gotta keep your ego in control. Am I so great that I can't be gold-plated? And the answer to that question was no. They can gold-plate me, because when a VC looks at your company, they're looking at what the future valuation is. So if you're a CEO of a startup company, believe me, they're already having their eyes who's going to replace you. Okay, already. And they're going to try to figure out how to do it. If you don't do your thing, they're going to figure out how to get rid of you. Why? Because they got to sell. And someone who has a very, gold-plated resume is higher to value higher, because people invest in founders and they invest in the people who are running the company as much as they are the technology that you're developing. So I had this feeling after we'd been going through the whole inquisition where we were sitting in 2 chairs, there were like 6 of them on the tables and pounding us with questions. After we got our term sheet, it was like 5 o'clock in the evening, and they go, Walter, we need to make a decision. We need to make a decision tonight. And I was the guy at the sign in blood, the whole thing. But I hadn't had a paycheck in so long, I didn't even know what it looked like. I had a little kid, you know? It was like, what is it gonna do? You know, they want me to sign this thing. I gotta do some really bad stuff. The people who would help me get to where I am in order to take this money that our company needed to get to the next level. And you're gonna be faced with those kinds of difficult decisions as well. You know, they're gonna ask you to do some very bad things. You gotta decide what kind of person you are at that moment. And so I begged them for the morning. I said, look, I gotta talk to my wife about it and, you know, give me till the morning. And that same day, I got a phone call from J&J saying, you know, Mr. Larkins, we're from the, you know, I can't remember what the name of the fund was at that time they had, but we're interested in your technology. If you can please get a call at your earliest convenience, we'd like to talk. Okay, that's a voicemail. I had a bird in hand, right? Deal. So the morning came, and I talked to my wife about it, and the guys called me at 8 o'clock sharp, and they said, Walter, what's your decision? Okay. So who knows what I said? Raise your hand. Who thinks they know? Yes. I think you said no. Who thinks I said no? Raise your hand. You think you said no. Okay, who thinks I said yes? Yeah.
Take it, take
I said no. I had bird in hand. I threw the bird way into the bushes, if you heard that expression. And I had this like phone message. So I followed up with the phone message. And ultimately J&J acquired my company. Didn't have to give up any equity, you know, didn't have to stress out, didn't have to screw over the people who had got me to where I was. And that's how we got my start in entrepreneurship. And then I had to figure out if I was still an entrepreneur. Because now you just sold your company, right? So what are you now? Okay, I started thinking names I can call myself. Like, what am I calling myself? What am I now? Like, nobody? The next thing? And so I went to a trade show, with like a VC trade show, with one of the VCs I actually liked. And he had introduced me to all his buddies. And I introduced with one venture capitalist. And I said, okay, so what do you do, Walter? And said, well, I'm a consultant. Because I got a huge consulting deal with J&J. That usually comes as part of the deal to keep you locked down so you can't do anything else for a while in that field. And the VC looked at me and said, he said, Walter, you're no consultant. You're an entrepreneur. And so I figured out that I could be an entrepreneur even if I don't have a company. Because you've been to the school of hard knocks. You know what it takes. You suffered through the agony of defeat and found victory. And I call it the tunnel. Okay, I know you have a few minutes. I call it the tunnel. This is what the tunnel is. You quit your perfectly good job. You max out all your credit cards. You borrow from friends and family. And you find yourself in the middle of the tunnel. Because in the middle of the tunnel, it's dark. Okay? As long as you're going through the tunnel, you can see back. You can always go back to what you were doing before. You know, it's not that far. I can still see the light, you know, where I was. And then you're in the middle. And so what separates an entrepreneur from someone who is not an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur will always go forward. Even though you don't even know what's in that tunnel that can wipe you out. You go forward because the regret you're going to feel going backwards is so overwhelming that you just wouldn't even stand yourself. Because at the end of the story of your life, you're not going to get a single good thing in your mind of being safe. The only things you remember are the risks and the challenges that you take. So going to the tunnel, even if you get wiped out in the tunnel and you don't make it out, is worth it. Because what you learn in that tunnel gives you more confidence to go through the tunnel again. And I went through the tunnel many, many times. I started 4 other companies, all through the same pathway. If a man can have a baby, that's what it's like. You know, it's painful. 9 months. You're talking about 3 years of suffering. On average, you're gonna suffer between 2 and 3 years, so you're extremely lucky. Suffering means constantly asking for money. As a CEO, your job is to sell. So if you think you can be like a nerd and not sell, you're in trouble. You better learn selling, because selling is your job. Otherwise, you're gonna find a replacement for it. Because when you become the CEO, all your career is spent selling investors, selling your team, selling your employees, or why they even should hang out with you. So that is my story. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have now. So any questions from anybody? And if you want to, Wade knows how to get in touch with me. If you want to reach out and talk to me later in private or whatever else, I'm certainly able to do that as well. Any questions for the generic masses? Yes.
Did you stay within the healthcare industry for all your companies?
That's a great question. My middle company was in email encryption system. So I sold that to a small Canadian company, but that was public. So email encryption, before people knew that your email is not secure, but way before Hillary got her stuff hacked into, timing it. So I would have done it a little bit later. Hey, would have really great. And then I invested in believe it or not, a clothing company. But the entrepreneur was not committed enough. So she had a great idea, but she wasn't passionate enough to stick with it, and she quit before I really had a chance to launch. So it's not everything you can throw money in is going to work. But I invest mostly in healthcare or things that can be attached to healthcare, because I like to invest in things that make a difference in people's lives. I have to say most of my inventions are related to that. I do have a couple of inventions on the shelf, as I told Wade, that are not necessary in healthcare at all. However, they still have a social benefit. So for me, that's what motivates. Anyone else got a question? No? Don't be afraid. I'm scary looking, but I'm not that scary. Yes?
How can we get in contact with you?
Wade has that information. Just follow with him and he'll give you all my information. Yes.
How much was the first company acquired?
Ballpark, we sold for $50 million. But I got to keep all most, because I didn't have dilution and all that other stuff going on. It was good. Yes.
When you sold to J&J, did the company have anything like on the books, and were you selling the product at all?
Finally, someone asked me that question. That's an outstanding question. No.
So they just bought your idea.
They bought my idea, exactly. They bought the idea, the financials, the projections, the PowerPoint, the whole package. The patent number one, yes.
Now, at that point, it's kind of ironic that J&J ended up acquiring you. If
It
they
is.
just let you innovate, they could have probably spent significantly less money, and you didn't have to go through all that suffering.
Well, that's one advantage. That's a great point, and I hope you guys heard that, because what he said was that why do you need to, if they would have allowed you to grow and innovate there, you wouldn't have left. That is absolutely the case. If they would have remained the same company it was when I was with it, when I first started, I wouldn't have left. But big companies, they can't help themselves. Okay, because companies, the companies aren't in the risk business. They're in destruction of risk. Okay, they start out in the risk business because they have no market share. So they're risk, and they are willing to take risks to get market share. But once they have market share, they're all about protecting it, building it, focusing on it, eliminating everyone else that's in the picture. But what that gives you an opportunity, because once you stop innovating, that gives companies and startups a chance to have a position where those companies at some point will decide to buy you. And being purchased is a good option. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with being acquired, but you still have to work on who your acquirer is and how engaged they're going to let you be. Sometimes the acquisition is, okay, we got this. But you're still talking about a big company, right? They're not going to change their attitude because they bought your startup. And you probably see a lot of startup entrepreneurs who get acquired by a big company after a few while. I'm a lousy employee, and they jettison. I think it's just probably every single one. Any other questions? Yes.
When you started the company, were you looking to be acquired or did you want to stay?
I did not know. I mean, let's say, put it this way, when you're pitching VCs, you have to say that they're already thinking about you getting acquired. They'll make one your strategy, but they want you to be $100 million, billion-dollar valuation company, and that's sort of the jargon that goes on right now. But in the back of their head, they're saying this company is going to be acquired. Because I did forget one thing. Before I hung up that call, what do you think the VC said? You have an idea? They didn't just say, okay, Walter, no problem. No. They said to me, excuse the expletive, if you fuck up that deal with J&J, do not come back to us. So they knew J&J was interested. They're going to take all my equity and then flip the company to basically the J&J. That was their plan. All those fears I had were actually true. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. Yes.
When you went to the 40th presentation and they said no, how did you react to get to the 55th?
That's a great question. I'll answer that question this way. If you don't do anything in your career pathway, you should at least sell something. Because selling allows you to deal with rejection. Okay, rejection is very tough for people who've never had any sales experience. And you're in sales, rejection is part of your job description. So I would say to answer that question, by that time, I'd sold for a lot of companies. I looked at no as the opportunity to get the yes. I never looked at it as rejection because I expected customers to say no. I might not know the reason they said no, but my philosophy was to always ask them why. Most people, when they get no, they go like this, okay. And they just walking them down the road, okay? But if you pause for a moment and say, why no? You'll get the answer. They'll tell you. Like I got that list. What do you think I asked after they said they were going to invest in my company? Why? Because I didn't have the list completed. I even halfway completed. So if I wouldn't have just walked out with, okay, thank you very much, walked out, I wouldn't have got that list.
So that's the important point here is when you hear a no, how do you use that information? How does it help you come back stronger to the 41st, to the 42nd?
I never got frustrated about all the no's, not even a little bit, because your team is watching you. Okay, if you come back from a sales call, whether it's a VC sales call or a sales call with a client, and you're all down, oh my God, I didn't get the deal. You don't have the right to do that. You gave up that right when you decided to be CEO. Okay, because they're looking at you. They're looking at how you're going to act. If you don't have that attitude, can-do attitude, that grit that you need to move forward, then why should your team have it? Your team is not your counselor, okay? You're alone. You gotta find another CEO to talk to. Do not talk about to your team about how you actually feel. Get over it. Any other questions?
No questions about judging the innovation
That would be a
challenge?
good question. Like, why do I pick this one company versus another? No questions about that? There is no question. You can be stretching out and asking questions. Okay, what's your question?
What determines what you would want to be your choice for ones that are not there?
Okay, it's a little different for this. What I generally, and I have discussions with the other because we have to agree as a group who's going to move forward to the next level. The first thing we look at, honestly, is the team. Okay, we just want to get the feel of how motivated they are. And usually the CEO is the one who presents. Or if the CEO, for me at least, if the CEO is not presenting the business idea, I immediately get worried. Okay, I get worried because you just delegated your #1 job to somebody else. So that means, forget about it. Are they going to be able to sell investors? No. You think an investor wants to talk to your VP of sales? No. They want to talk to you. That's one of the guys they asked me to do with. They talk to you. You got to defend your business, your idea, and you got to defend your people. So that's #1. #2 is, so many ideas that you don't think are marketable because they had to meet us. I don't think it's gonna work. Okay? I don't have that attitude. Okay, I don't really base a decision necessarily on whether I think it's gonna work or not, because no one can predict the future. What's a patent? It's an idea that no one believes is gonna work until it comes into existence, and it is. So I would say that the team really should, the CEO particularly, how when the coaches or evaluators start asking questions and they see you start melting or getting defensive, red flag. I will not help one person, and I've had a lot of people approach me that is defensive about my opinion. And I said, oh, well, you should start getting a defensive mode. If a person's being critical, you want to be in a listening mode, not defending mode. It'll tell you a VC or investor is going to have their own opinion. Doesn't mean you got to do it, but it sure means you got to manage that discussion so they don't think that you're defensive and not open to suggestions. And that's it. Yeah, I guess.
Do you think there's a blend between defending your idea if it's getting bashed and taking the criticism and telling the investor that you're learning from their feedback?
First, they want to see, your first reaction has to be getting more information and then understanding clearly what their issues are without being, number one, the listening skill. If they see you start defending right away, red signal, I'm not going to help this person. I'm not going to be able to help this person, because an investor doesn't just invest because they just want to give you money, especially the round you guys are going to see in the A round. They want to be part of it. Okay, they want to feel like they're making a contribution. They want to be part of the team. And if you can't take criticism or opinions and you come back hard, oh no, I already looked at that, I looked at this, I looked at that, no, that's not going to work. You're telling them it's not going to work. They probably invested like in 20 companies and they've seen what works and doesn't work. Well, you're going to tell them something that they don't know. So you have to be really open to criticism, not sacrificing your idea, but letting them know you're truly listening. Anyone else?
All right.
All right. Well, thank you again. Thank you very much.
All right, there's a few more pieces of pizza. You can help yourself. We're going to go over LivePlan now. I want to introduce Dean Heiss. Dean is one of the founders of the incubator about 7 years ago. He was an MBA student here, and he's also a member to one of the teams here. So make sure and pay attention to his comments. What we're going to look at is Dean will start taking through part of the LivePlan. As soon as they grab their snacks, we'll pick it up.
Wait, do you know what stage is mine? Oh, okay. Okay, we're good.
Who has Dean as a member?
The better health thing. Things like better health. Better health.
Nope.
Yeah, it's like a healthcare app.
Not one of them.
That must be it.
Nice. Has anybody looked at LivePlan?
I looked at it, that's it.
This video is how
And I'm like,
You are.
That's different. That's different. That is
I swear, I was like, these are
I'm not.
And that's cool.
All right. All right. One thing on LivePlan, when you first sign in, it's going to take you to a page with your company. And on that page, it's going to say, give you a little video, an introductory video. All right? And so watch that video, look at LivePlan, and then you can get into it. What we want to focus on tonight is the financials, okay? Because there is a ton of information in the financials section. And when you look at it, Dean will show you, because you can get industry comparisons, you can get typical margins within your industry, these kind of things that will strengthen your pitch and show that you know about your industry. Okay, so we'll turn it over to Dean's company here, the Vertical Garden Startup.
Thanks, man. Good evening, guys. Let's see, we're in the second hour. You guys got some snacks. How you doing? Good. That was an amazing story. I was enthralled. You could have kept going all night. This is a vertical garden that Pia Gupta, who knows Pia Gupta here? Yeah? Professor of Finance?
She's the chair of finance.
Chair of Finance.
And after as instructor of one of your finance classes.
She's awesome. So she and I, we created this company together in LivePlan a few years back. It's funny, I actually had to update this to start in January of this year. When I looked at it previously, it was like in 2020, or 2019, we were going to start up in 2020. You guys have looked at this, but you haven't actually like played around with it, right? Okay, so do you guys have it up right now, by any chance? Some of you guys do, okay. Some of you guys do. You can bring it up. You can actually follow along. You can go right to the forecasting tab, because the first couple tabs is like how to create a pitch and here's your plan. Yeah,
You
wait.
go back, that's what you will.
Oh, it
There's where you'll see the video for each section on writing the sections.
Yeah, at the very beginning.
Also, the structure that they give you, their embedded structure, it can be modified. And I suggest modifying how they organize the executive summary, because it's not a good structure.
Yeah, definitely. You can totally modify that. I would skip this section essentially, pitch in the plan. What you want to use this tool for right now is on the financials side of things. And on the financials, you can see some tabs across the top, and each one of those tabs have tabs within them, essentially. You can think of this as a workbook or a spreadsheet in Excel. And the financial tables, they're all presented here for you. So it does all the calculations. It actually walks you through the process pretty well. And I'll try to at least explain what Tia and I did and how we use this tool to come up with the financials for our company. And then we'll compare those against the benchmarks for the industry, which is really cool that you can actually see all this stuff. And you can tweak it, you can change it. If you're seeing something that doesn't look right because your benchmark's way off, you can then come back and tweak it. So, and you can also see if it pencils out kind of pretty quickly. I actually made some changes just this morning and was able to see how sensitive my financial model is to different changes. So, so if you go to financial tables at the top, you have these tabs, the revenue, which, have you guys gone through the business model canvas yet?
Yes.
Yeah, the building blocks, the 9 building blocks of the business canvas, right? So all your revenue is coming from the right-hand side of the business model canvas, right? From your customer, generates revenue. You have all these different revenue streams based on your value proposition. And your revenue, what we decided for our vertical garden, does anyone know what a vertical garden is? Yeah? Okay, so what's a vertical garden? It's a garden that grows up a wall, essentially. Yeah, exactly. And we decided we were going to sell kits for people to grow their own vertical gardens, right? And these kit sales, you look at them, we figured out how many units we could sell and by year, essentially, and what we could sell them at, right? And we figured based on our marketing plan, right? You definitely want to put a marketing plan together. Have you guys put marketing plans together? Yeah. Have you done any market analysis yet? Is that next? It's coming up.
It's coming up.
Next week, you will
Okay.
have some customer journeys.
All right. Well, you're going to know then what to do with your marketing plan. You're going to be able to feed it into your financial plan, essentially. If your marketing plan says that you could sell 50 kits in January or 75 kits in February, you can hit all these targets, right? You can say by the end of the year, we're going to be selling 400 kits a month, right? You're going to get up to a certain number of kits. You can input these into LivePlan, or you could go with a constant amount. If you wanted to go with a constant value that you're going to hit 100 every month, 50 every month for the first year, or you can vary it over time. You can just type that in here, and then you can see, okay, first year we're going to sell 3,000 kits. We're going to go up every year from then on, maybe 8%, 10% increases from then on. That's an initial projection based on your marketing analysis. It says you can get a certain percentage of market share over time, right? And based on your experience, like you've got a marketing person on your team. They're like, oh yeah, I can totally sell 50 units in the first month and double that 2 months from that. So you have your marketing projections fed in to each one of your revenue streams. So you've got your kit sales here and your prices. How much can you sell this kit for? Right now, we figured, T and I, we did some competitive analysis, right, which is part of your market analysis, competitive analysis to say, similar kits sell easily for $250. So we felt like we could corner some market share here, capture some market share by selling these for $250 each. Right? You input that in as a revenue stream. All I did was click add revenue stream. What do you call it? Kit sales, essentially. And it walks you through that process. And we did that for everything that we felt like we could sell, that we could focus our company's efforts on. We figured we could sell kits. We could sell a seasonal seed subscription, right? So people could figure out, hey, we're gonna need some seeds, right, to go with our kits. And what did we say? We could do 100 new customers each month. That was our target, our initial target, right, for seed subscription. We figured if people are buying kits and seeds, they're going to need some organic fertilizer. So we're going to have that as a subscription service. And then specialty seed sales. We figured we could do $5,000 in specialty seed sales. And we would start the revenue at a certain time. Right? So we have these revenue streams from our different customer segments. We were going to target them via our marketing plan. You can see that there's a financial plan that results from it. It simply multiplies your quantity, unit sales times your unit prices, right, to come up with how much you're going to need. That's on your revenue side, essentially, which is the bottom right building block of your 9 building blocks, business model canvas. Questions on revenue? I'm curious, what are you guys selling in your companies? Anyone have more than one revenue stream? Anyone have one revenue stream?
I have a question actually.
Yeah, you have a question?
So like ad revenue, like let's say an app or something where
Ad
we're
revenue,
trying to, yeah. What do you think? Like, I don't know where to even start with that.
Yeah, you could totally add ad revenue. So like you would go with ad.
Advertising revenue, like how do you calculate this? Depending on the advertising.
Yeah, so you can have unit sales, which those are not unit sales, right? You can have billable hours, like that's if you're selling a service, essentially, right? You're billing it, like you're an attorney, you're a doctor, billing hours. Reoccurring charges for subscriptions, membership, rentals, but then revenue only, which is your ad revenue, essentially. It'll walk you through how to enter those in. Yep. But these are 4 examples of revenue streams. When you did the 9 building blocks, we had like 9 different examples of revenue streams, essentially. Advertising is one of them, for sure. So that's a good example, ad revenue. What's funny is that one actually said ad revenue. So that's your revenue stream, essentially. The more revenue streams you have, typically the better. You don't want to spread yourself thin or anything like that. But P and I felt like we could have a nice little startup with some kit sales that we're focused on, some seasonal seed subscriptions, and a couple other things on the side. And as you have that built out, you can see where your money's coming from. Essentially, kit sales is the bulk. It's 750 of the 850 essentially for year 1. And it pretty much always stays the bulk unless we were to change how many subscribers we get to the seed subscription, for instance. So, other questions on revenue? Pretty clear. It's you're bringing in money from the sale of something, right? Either your time or you're bringing in revenue from ads. Direct costs. So when you're adding in your items, you can actually specify when you have a sale of something like our kits, you can specify the cost associated with it. We said that we were going to have 30% of our kits. Our kits would essentially cost 30% of what we're selling, right? If we sell them for $100, they cost $30 to make. And that was an easy one, essentially, to enter in here. Seed costs, we did the same thing, 20%. Fertilizer costs, 50%. So we're making less margin on the fertilizer costs. And then 20% of the specialty seed sales. So, that was just a very basic assumption based on our market analysis, what the typical margins are on these types of sales, right? And when you look at benchmarks, you're going to see how we compare. Essentially, you're going to see where we're off, and if we are off, you're going to want to make changes to that. Essentially, so for instance, just looking at one of these benchmarks, our gross margin, we figured, our vertical gardens in the nursery, garden center, and farm supply industry, right? You're going to want to select what industry you're in, right? You can search for an industry based on whatever you guys are selling, medical devices or healthcare services or whatever you're selling. You can figure out which industry you're in, and it goes by this NAICS code, essentially, which there are tons of. Yes.
NAICS, everybody familiar with NAICS codes? That's how the economy is divided, right? There'll be a 2-digit NAICS code that says agriculture, or there'll be a 2-digit code that says manufacturing. It goes up to 8 digits to where you say manufacturing items for medical devices with hard operations. So it gets much more specific as you get more numbers in. So it's just a way to organize economic data about a sector of the economy.
Yeah, it's done by economists.
NAICS is the North American Industrial Classification System.
Yep. So yeah, exactly. So you figure out what industry you're in, where you're comparing yourselves, and then it brings up the benchmarks for your specific code of your industry, essentially. And essentially, the benchmark right now is 43% for other nursery, garden centers, and farm supplies, and our forecast is 49%. So we're essentially in the ballpark. It's not too wild. Essentially, it's higher, and maybe we need to look at our margins, and maybe we're being too optimistic. Potentially, we need to be more in the 43% range. But you'll see as you tweak certain parts of your forecast, your gross margin is going to change, and your operating margin is going to change, yeah, and your net profit margin is going to change. Like you can see, we're wildly off when it comes to the operating margin, right, or a net profit margin. But if we're able to defend, if we're able to defend our forecast, our valid assumptions, we're able to stick by those assumptions and say, yeah, I know what the industry benchmark is. It's 8%, but ours is a different thing. It's not exactly like all other nurseries or garden centers. We're simply very low overhead. We're selling these kits, and we can pull it off for 20% because we've done that based on these first 5 sales. But you can make an argument that 8% is benchmark, but we are at 31%, and that's why we are so much better. And that's why you should invest in us. But you do want to look at this as feedback and say, am I actually at 30%? And how you get to that is you put in your revenue, you put in your direct costs associated with all your revenue, right? One of your direct costs is going to be your labor, and that's on another tab. If you go to the personnel, essentially you can put in all the different people that you would hire. So sales, marketing, and logistics, right? How are we going to sell these kits? And how much are you going to pay these employees? I looked at this morning, and I think we were paying them $2,000 or $1,500 a month, and I felt like maybe that's way low now. That was like back in 2019. So I kicked that up to $3,500. We're going to be paying these sales, marketing, logistics individuals. We're gonna have to package and ship these. In the 9 building blocks, on the left-hand side, there is one of your key resources. Thank you, key resources. You're gonna want to pull this from your key resources in terms of all your costs that generates your expenses. So what's one resource that you need to sell, like kits? You need a sales and marketing team. You need someone to package and ship it. So that's where we pulled this from our 9 building blocks, from the key resources. Anyone have any questions about your key resources on your 9 building blocks? Yeah, or something else?
Do you recommend pumping it all together like you had it, or do you recommend spreading it out?
If you have more details, spread it out. Is that what you mean? Like, yeah, like putting sales separate from marketing, separate from logistics. Yeah, totally separate. So, yep, that's what I recommend. P&I.
You can think of this as your chart of accounts for accounting. You can have that detail. The more fine you have the detail, the more control you can have.
Okay. But if you're paying them all plus the rate, it would potentially be okay.
It would be okay, but if you can put the detail in there, it's better. Because the rates could change over time as you hire different people and you realize that you have different needs on your team. So, yeah, yep, definitely. Yeah, the more detail you have, the better. Yeah. As long as you're not confused by it. So, you can remember what your assumptions were. In fact, this is pretty cool. I think you can add in notes. Yeah, check this out. Just like Excel, which I love about Excel, you can add in notes and little flags. You can put one in here, essentially. You could say that, you know, all of them are being paid the same at the moment, or something like that, whatever you want. So you can go back and look at your assumptions. Because you're going to be asked about all of your assumptions and why you decided to pay them this much and why you decided that you could sell 150 each month, that type of stuff. So you want to defend that. Other expenses that you're going to need, you want to identify those. These are all direct costs, right? So you have your facility, you're going to rent or lease something. Again, it walks you through all of this, which is kind of nice. Like, how do you want to enter it? Do you want to vary the amount over time, or the constant? There's a one-time amount because just buying some building, or a percent of overall revenue that you're always going to invest in it. And as your revenue grows, you're going to grow your space. Or like an Amazon facility, you have to store stuff in an Amazon facility. You have to store more stuff. It'll increase as a rate of your revenue. What we did was we went with a constant amount. We said that we were going to have warehouse $4,000 per month. We were going to rent it, essentially. So we went, but you have all these different options here, right? And walk you through it. So we figured we needed a place to put all of our kits. We needed to advertise, right? And we were going to spend money on that. We were going to spend percentage of overall revenue. 12% of our revenue was going to go to marketing. Percentage of overall revenue. It's funny, this is actually a dollar sign. It should be a percentage sign. So that's the system. But percentage of overall revenue, 12% marketing is going to go to our ads, so we can sell these kits essentially. And then we figured we need a printer. I don't know why we want a printer, but just you always want to think about those ancillary things that you're going to want to fund. So those are expenses. Questions on expenses. Move to assets. We decided we were going to have a truck and a 3D printer. That 3D printer was going to print out some of our vertical garden stuff. And our truck, we were going to need to, cart stuff around the city. So, and that was a one-time amount. We were going to buy it for $35,000, which back in 2019, you could actually afford a truck for $35,000. Not anymore. Taxes get calculated in this tool, which is nice. And you can, Wade pointed this out, you can watch videos and you can show the instructions for each one of these, by the way, which is kind of cool. It walks you through expenses, right? Things to think about when it comes to expenses, your personnel, show instructions, right? And you can watch a video for every one of these. And it's like a 3-minute video. So it's worth the time to just watch that video. It'll walk you through how to enter and stuff here. It'll show all these cool bells and whistles and all these features that this application has. Dividends, we decided that Pete and I were gonna have, we weren't gonna take any money out of the company. We were gonna have any other investments. So we didn't need to focus on dividends right now, and nor do you right now have to focus on dividends. Just focus on, financials in terms of your revenue and costs. right? Both sides of your business model canvas. Cash flow assumptions, this is really telling, right? This is telling me that based on the inputs that I changed this morning, that I'm gonna have cash flow issues for a couple months, right? I'm gonna need to finance $23,000, $20,000, $10,000. Like I'm gonna have to finance roughly like $60,000 for the first few months of this project, right? So that I can then start turning a profit in July, August, September. So I've essentially described here how much I need to either put on my, take out of my savings, put on my credit, or ask for funding from people. So based on these assumptions, essentially, I could totally tweak things, and let's say your object is to not spend more than, I don't know, a certain dollar amount, not have to finance a certain dollar amount. Well, then I need to tweak all my assumptions up front. Maybe I can't bring on as many personnel up front until later on down the road, or I can only do a certain number of sales. I have to tweak my assumptions. Otherwise, this is what I will have to face through that tunnel of 6 months or so. So, and I think Wade's mentioned this a few times, and Frank mentions it all the time, is that your assumptions should always be like the amount that you will require should always probably be doubled, and same with the both on the cost and the timing side of things. So if this is saying that you need $60,000 for 6 months, you might need $120,000 for a year, essentially. Obviously, this is based on what you believe is reality right now, and it can totally change between now and then. So you want to kind of plan for those contingencies and tweak it out, or tweak this as you see fit. So I would not move forward with this plan as is right now. I'd have to make some tweaks, essentially. And maybe that tweak is that I just focus on one of the revenue streams, because I'm cutting myself too thin. And maybe then I have to reduce the number of individuals, like personnel. Yeah.
But just saying, okay, we're not gonna make money, I'm gonna tweak it till we make money.
To make money. Well,
Because you were saying you're gonna tweak it, but that's not gonna work. But that may be reality.
you're right. So maybe I just need to invest $60,000 in this.
Right,
So,
it's gonna cost you more. I mean,
yeah, or
I
120.
I could make any number, any set of numbers, say whatever you want to say.
Yeah. But are you comfortable moving forward with what you're?
Well, that's just it. Yeah.
That's the question. Yeah, and me personally, P and I are not ready to put up $30,000 each to move forward with this idea, right? Like we aren't, right?
Right.
But if that's what you have to ask yourself. It's like, is this something that you want to move forward with? Like me personally, right now, this is not lucrative right now for me, right? And it's
Your kids don't need a college fund.
right, and I have 2 kids now, a 7-month-old and a 4.5-year-old, right? Definitely need to worry about them right now. And overall, you want to look at, and I'm actually going to show you here, like profit and loss, balance sheet. Let's see here. In year 5, essentially, right? Essentially, the company will have $1.8 million worth of assets, right? $1.8 million worth of liability. Oh my gosh, okay. What you want to look at are typical like return on investments and where your company is going to be valued for 5 years from now. Do you want to invest $60,000 to get a certain amount out? And those are the spreadsheets that I always put together right up front that are very high level. This one, it's definitely more tactical. But yeah, you want to ask yourself, is it worth that time and effort, essentially, to have a revenue stream of $1.4 million 5 years from now? You might want to go to $60,000 if you have the time. You don't have 2 kids at home that you're trying to raise at the moment. But good point, Frank. That yes, this is very realistic. This could be reality, essentially, right? Where was I here?
Starting a business is like having kids. There's never a good time.
It's tough. Yeah, exactly.
You just have to do it.
That's exactly right. You want a kid, just have a kid. Yeah.
A business, start a business.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's chaos and it's hell, but then there are so many good things that come out of it, right? And it is worthwhile.
You can always talk yourselves out of starting a business.
That's right.
Because it's hard.
Yep.
It's scary. It is.
That's true.
No, it's hard.
So
Have the same bad things, Steve.
that's true.
Your wife was wondering about you.
Your partner managed.
Yeah.
That's true, actually. And you can choose to have a kid, but just like you can choose to have a business, essentially. And I look at businesses like that. I do. And but you only have limited time. You can't have 10 kids, essentially. And if you already have 2 kids, you want to bring on the business that you're really passionate about, because you're going to be stuck in that business for years, essentially. So, yeah.
The main theme from the story is you want your numbers to reflect the best guess about reality,
You do.
right?
That's
So you're gonna go to a VC meeting or try and sell it to a bank or whatever. They know and look at numbers all day. So don't try to make adjustments to your projections, because the worst thing that can happen is they can see that you tried to change the numbers.
It's true. They're
They'll
gonna
never trust
know the benchmarks in your industry, essentially, and they're gonna see that the operating margin of this type of a industry is 8%. Our forecast is at 31%. So you're gonna have to explain that, essentially. And why are we at 31% when our competitors are at 8%? And maybe you then, based on your market research, you show that these nurseries have high overhead costs, right? High fixed costs with a ton of people in them. And yours is simply just a warehouse where you're selling kits. And so it's very different from that benchmark. It's a good profit margin, 24%. Let's see here. You have all these cash metrics, productivity metrics. It walks you through all these different metrics, how efficient you are in staffing, for instance. All of your results versus the benchmark are going to come up when you actually put in your actuals. This tool actually connects to your QuickBook if you're actually running your business, and so you'll be able to see how you're actually doing. So that's a very nice feature. Makes things kind of easy for you. It shows you where you're spending your money, how you're spending it on rent, marketing compared to others. Apparently, most nurseries and garden centers, they don't spend much on marketing, right? Whereas PA and I decided we were going to spend 12% on marketing, right? So that we can generate those sales. Because we're not like a normal nursery, which is on the corner, which you drive by and everyone just goes to on like a Saturday. We are someone who we need to get subscriptions and online sales. And then you can see how much you're spending on payroll versus the benchmark. And you can see some other metrics like your quick and current ratio when it comes to financials. But Wade's point, valid, that you want to make sure that you have what you believe are accurate assumptions for each one of your streams here, your revenue, your direct costs, your personnel, and your expenses. Those 4 basic ones, which all come from your 9 building blocks, which you already have identified. So, or in your business plan. So thoughts on this? Questions on this? Yeah? You gonna use this tool soon? Work your marketing plan into it? And if you have questions on it, you can ask them subsequently. I think this is required for the Innovation Challenge. Go ahead.
So, is there a place in there? I'm sure it's someplace, but
Maybe.
put cash in there, we have that shortfall. to-
Right.
To put your credit card, the interest, if you're gonna take out a loan, build that and show it.
Yep.
Okay.
Set starting balances, I believe. And you can add loans, add lines of credits, add investments. Yep.
So it'll show the impact, for example, the chart that you have.
It'll take it from red to,
But it'll show a different line, the cash that's offsetting the loss on the source.
I believe so. Yeah, it'll offset that loss, and so you will be positive, essentially, net positive.
But you'll see what. I guess that's my question.
You
Ah.
look at the statement
add
and
line.
see that the cash is under the investment.
Yeah, that'd be cool if you can see.
As a result of,
Yes, if you see what contribution to numbers, from what source it comes from.
Oh, yeah, on your financial balance sheet, or, yeah, I'm not sure if it shows on that chart though, but yeah, let's add it in. Current asset. Spread it over, we'll do 1 month, so $60,000 comes in 1 month, January. Now, oh, it actually put it as a loss.
Oh, yeah.
Because you put it in as a debt.
I did.
You shouldn't mix that. No, you shouldn't mix it. That should be, the loss should stay the loss, but the offset should be cash.
Yeah, asset, you would think so. So I entered in that incorrectly. It probably talks about it in the video. Current assets. Oh, here we go. Cash. How'd I add it in there?
That other chart is going to reflect your P&L.
So your balance sheet over time, but it's not showing it over time in the chart here.
If
Okay.
you expand, actually, you already had it.
On the profit and loss, yeah. Cash flow, here's your cash flow. Cash on hand. I didn't enter that as cash. But you would think it would show up here. You enter in cash.
You can add another category. Right?
Yeah, back on here. Add asset, and asset. Because cash, right?
Part of this is that you need to get comfortable with the tool because if you add these things and find out where they go, then that's information that you will have when you pitch. And then the judges ask you questions about why is your revenue stream look like a hockey stick? You can say it's because, and you know, and can't stress enough those industry comparisons. As Dean said, whomever you're talking to, they're going to have experience in that sector. They say, this sector, the margin, like in the grocery sector, the margins aren't 50%. Right? So they know they have a ballpark figure in mind. If you're deviating from that, then your whole presentation is questioned.
Is there a use of funds?
I'm not seeing use of funds. You have line of credit, but it's not like what it's used for. Terms, withdrawals, term limit. I would stay pretty basic essentially with, that you are loaning this company X dollars.
How much money you're need?
Yep. This one says that, your lowest projected cash balance is $83,000. I actually entered in that as an asset that I had to purchase the $60,000. Cash that I was
That's what I
using.
went negative.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And that's contributing to $83,000. So I added that too quickly. But yeah, it does tell you what your lowest balance would be and how much you would then need to fund. You can do a lot with this, and I was a little too quick on that one. But yeah, I would stay basic with it right now, just to put in what are your assets that you're going to need, and from a financial perspective, just stick to your revenue that you're going to be generating and the costs associated with that revenue, essentially. And if you put that in there along with some personnel and some basic expenses, you can then get to the funding later, essentially, how you're going to fund it. Yeah, but it does have some good bells and whistles.
And all of this information will be exported when you export your business.
That's right.
Right? And you'll get some nice charts and graphs and pictures, because you don't want in your business plan all of this with your narrative. These would be appendices as opposed to in the body of the story.
And you can get those charts and graphs and all that fun stuff by, clicking on the dashboard. You can go and see your trends, your profits and losses, balance sheet. You can see it over time and say, current fiscal year, for instance, this is my forecast for the year. So it does produce all that for you, which is kind of nice. I just need to back out that $60,000 asset on here. So,
And I think Frank mentioned that you'd be doing this in stages. There's the marketing section, there's the operations section of the business plan, there's the financial section.
questions on this? Again, stick to revenue, direct cost, personnel, and expenses. That'll pretty much get you like 80% of the way there.
So the main thing is use the tool, play with it, get comfortable with it, changing numbers. One thing in financial analysis, I'm sure you were taught by Frank or whoever taught you finance 500 and 600, is the importance of sensitivity analysis. So what happens if your labor costs go up by 10%? How's it going to affect your results? What happens if your cost of money? So you can play all these scenarios just by changing a cell.
Definitely want to see what the sensitivities are, and then also look at your benchmarks to compare. So if you don't know where you are in your industry, you should definitely figure that out. That'll be a good starting point.
Right?
All
Any
right.
questions for Dean while we haven't
All right.
play a game of stump Dean online?
Yeah. The last time I looked at this, I saw it with Pia. We looked at it in 2020, and so I looked at it, last night, this morning, and at the very least, I was able to go in and change the first year forecast from 2020 up to 2023. So, so at least we weren't looking at January of 2020. So, yeah, and you can leverage this to build out your own Excel tables and whatnot too. So you can actually get your own things going on your own when you're not going to be using LivePlan. But this is a great model software, and you're going to need it for competition. So.
And if you look at this model and the document it generates, all of the foundation should come from that business model canvas.
Yep.
And your research that you did leading up to this point.
Those are your inputs.
Right.
All right.
Any other questions, comments? Just as some background, last semester, the focus was on ideation and creativity. This semester, the focus is much more on writing the business plan. We'll have people like Walter coming in, we'll have marketing people, finance people, and Frank and Dean coming in. We'll have entrepreneurs coming in to talk about entrepreneurship at their company, how to do storytelling, developing your pitch deck. They'll come in and talk to you. So that will be the focus this semester, not the how do you come up with your idea, how do you do image searches and all that.
Do they all have business plans due in the competition?
17th, right?
Okay. And they've been working on those through the holidays?
Yeah.
I think most of the groups, while they were in
We're
Switzerland,
already had all the time.
while they were in
They
Switzerland.
spent all their time on the plane going to and from Switzerland working on their business plan.
Yeah.
Just nod.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you. Good luck.
If you are part of AMBA, make sure you let me know you were here and attest that you were here for the full show. Dinner and the show. All right? Are you ready? This is